inefficiencies in supply chains, working with a lot of small micro businesses and things like that. They just raised $100 million in Series B funding, and from Tiger Global. So one of the big ones, and they are inching into unicorn. They are valuated into over 600 million. There you go.
Thanks, Matthew. Okay, the Twitter space is open for those who prefer to hang out over there. Inviting a bunch of folks real quickly. Okay, that's open. And for those just joining us, Cheryl is sitting in a Tokyo during a blackout due to a rather large 7-point-something earthquake north of Tokyo near Fukushima, and that is of grave concern because Fukushima has an already damaged nuclear power plant on the ocean. And they've already struggled to some degree with containing the radioactivity from leaking into the ocean and contaminating all the fish. So let's hope to God that's not happening as we speak. And that's
Is that from the 2010 tsunami damage?
Right.
I remember that was a huge one. Or is it a new one that it's still leaking?
No, Fukushima's only had one massive calamity, and it was about 10 years ago. Okay, so we're gonna.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. I'm sure we'll be getting updates as we go through the headlines today about how that's doing. Although it might take them several days or several hours, at least, and maybe even days to do a proper assessment around the damage to the Fukushima plant. Scary shit. And glad you're okay, Cheryl. And what an interesting way to start today. And it's so prescient that the mainstream news is just getting wind of it right now. As Cheryl pinged me 10 minutes before the room opened to say her power's out and all of Tokyo's power is out. Because that's one heck of a jolt. And Cheryl, can you comment on how the power went out first and then you felt the earthquake, right? And then based on all the earthquakes that you have felt over the years in Tokyo, how would this compare? And I don't know if she's
I think she is on the phone. The phone symbol blinked for her.
Right. No doubt. So, welcome back.
You might want to make somebody back up mod like AMA or Mez while Cheryl's going through that. Like make a backup mod.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm back.
For Clubhouse. I don't know about Twitter.
Yeah. Cheryl, I had a question. How did this earthquake compare to previous earthquakes that you have felt in Tokyo?
You mean the one 11 years ago?
No. How does the one today compared with others that you have experienced?
It is not so strong. It's just a bit longer. So for the shake, it's fine. We don't really. It is just longer than usual, but it's not that strong for me because I'm quite far away from Fukushima.
Right.
I just now gave Kyoko a call, so she was telling me that many people in Tokyo, the electricity is out, and there is a tsunami alert still, so they are a bit worried that that area may have tsunami, Miyagi and Fukushima. So it is really where the nuclear plant was. Remember, 11 years ago there was a meltdown. That's exactly the same spot.
Yeah.
So it's a bit concerning now. So right now the government are gathering to discuss how to the crisis management. Well, they're used to it, but they're working on it now.
Yeah, I don't. What kind of management protocol is there for dealing with a tsunami.
Of course, all those people who are along the coast have to evacuate to high grounds.
Right.
And from the past experience, well, they just had an anniversary a few days ago. I mean, a few days ago, right?
Right.
March 11th. So I think a lot of people, they must be very scared now. So they will all evacuate to high ground, of course. They definitely will do that because they have a very bad experience. I'm sure they are all having trauma now.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I know. Just hope for the best. I just hope that the tsunami is not going to happen.
Yeah, careful, Cheryl.
I'm okay. Here will not have tsunami. The only thing is electricity, but it's okay.
It's just amazing that it's on the 10th year anniversary. You have a 7.3 and a 6.4 all within 5 minutes. Just amazing.
My husband was in Tokyo airport when it happened 11 years ago, and he said that he really did feel it, like shaking at the airport.
Yep. 11 years ago, I was actually just touched down Singapore when it happened. I had a business trip back to Singapore, so I was in Singapore when it happened. But I need to do crisis management because my team is still in Tokyo. So I had to organize them. In fact, I flew them out to Singapore to continue working because it's too chaotic. It was too chaotic then in Tokyo, so it was really bad.
The article I have here is that the Japan meteorological agency says that the quake struck 60 kilometers below the sea. The region is part of northern Japan that was devastated by a deadly 9.0 quake. This is a 7.3. So, and that was 11 years ago. And the agency issued a tsunami advisory for up to a meter sea surge, which is a 3-foot sea surge in parts of Miyagi, meaning the ocean is essentially going to bring a wave that's about a meter high. The whole entire ocean rises about a meter very rapidly. That's what a tsunami is. People have being from Thailand, we understand what a tsunami is. And people in Japan have suffered that as well. And it's not just a solitary wave that's 1 meter high that rolls in. The entire ocean rises 1 meter and comes onto the land very rapidly. So you instantly find yourself in 1 meter of, the ocean rises, and comes onto the land a meter high. And there's no stopping it. And that's why I say, what are the protocols? Because you can't stop the ocean rising 1 meter instantly and coming onto the land. The best you can do, as Cheryl said, is run for high ground, and everything in its path will just sort of be dealt with later.
Yes, definitely.
Is it a coincidence Chris Karnoff's not here? Because he keeps talking about setting off nukes underground to generate power. Are you sure that's not what's going on here?
Jesus. Even worse if it's to generate bitcoins. But
to drill 60 kilometers, that's no feat job.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll keep tabs on that as the news. That's the biggest news of the past hour for sure on a global basis, and we'll continue to get those updates.
In fact, it was 5 minutes before the room started.
Cheryl, how long was the gap between the power going out and you feeling the earthquake?
Well, it was within 1 minute, but I felt very strange because the whole thing just went into darkness, and I thought it's just my house trip. So I was walking to the the circuit breaker, but on my way there, I was shaking. So I guess it's probably a few seconds, like 10 seconds or less than that.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
I think a really important thing to keep in. I'm sorry, Tyler.
I was going to ask, at any point did you think to yourself, Tyler was right?
About electricity?
Yes.
No, I was thinking about Ben because we just had this discussion yesterday.
Yeah.
Must be me. I'm the one who attracted. Law of attraction. Next time I'm not going to talk about it anymore.
Law of attraction with your power going out. There you go. Don't think about your power going out because God knows you'll bring that into reality.
Yes.
Yeah, but some git keeps going on about how we need to look after our own power, water, and energy. So,
Right. So Cheryl, here's what you do. Just think about your power going back on and bring that reality back into existence.
You know what? What I was
law
thinking
of
just now. I
attraction.
was thinking about barbecue tomorrow.
I wonder, can we attract electricity? That would be.
I
It's
have a
not supposed to
solar
work quite
charger
that
though.
quickly, the law of attraction, is it? it's
Because
yeah.
you know what? If there's no electricity, all my frozen ingredients in my fridge is going to thaw, right? So tomorrow I'm going to have a barbecue.
And
Hey,
can. Yeah.
I was in a seminar with a crowd about how all this shit coming into your life is because you've got this shit magnet turned on. It's what you're talking about, the law of attraction, but working against you. And then he made this point that even if you start thinking right today, it's going to take a while for the shit to stop flying at you because it travels at the speed of shit rather than so once you start thinking right, shit's going to keep happening. But in regards to those surface waves, Tyler, they're about 6 kilometers a second. Where light is, light in a cable or electricity in a cable is maybe 200, 300,000 kilometers a second. So yeah, basically the light's instant and it's 6 kilometers a second-ish, gives you some idea. Roughly, I mean, that order.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? The moonlight is so bright today.
Yeah, it's nearly a full moon. Yeah.
Yeah,
I just
you
opened my.
probably can see stars in Tokyo, and that is nothing
Yes,
usual you can do.
precisely. So dark everywhere now.
They
Yes.
say the moon affects the tides.
Yes.
Well,
Oh,
this is a good point. You had a power outage late at night as well.
yes. Midnight.
Yeah.
Can expect some spectacular photos of a dark
Anyway,
city.
I found my camping solar charger, so I can still charge my phone later.
With a solar shower in the middle of the night? Okay.
No, no,
Now we're going
my
to have a
my
grammar
my
course in physics,
my,
my
my
friend.
no,
It's
my
a full
charger
moon.
is already fully charged, so I can still charge my phone because the the power, what I call that, the power source, the solar power charger is already charged, so I just need to use it, and then
Can we,
tomorrow morning I'll charge my power source.
can we take this time to appreciate how Cheryl is so committed to this that during a blackout at night with a solar
Yeah,
charger, she
the
is
first
here?
thing I do, because it was 5 minutes before the session, I couldn't find my phone. So I just emailed Tyler.
Yeah.
I say, oh no, maybe I couldn't join because I can't find my phone.
But Cheryl, I have a question. If you run out of the battery on your phone, don't you want to a little bit conserve some, or do you have a way to recharge it?
Oh, I was just talking about it. I have a solar charger,
Okay,
which is fully charged now, so I can still charge my phone a few times.
okay, because you may need it, right, for other purposes
Yeah, so that's
later
why
on.
I'm not on cloud deck. So if anything happen, I can still do like my Skype on my computer, and my Samsung 5G pocket Wi-Fi can last for quite like one whole day, 24 hours. So
Yep.
by then
No,
the sun will be out, so it'll be okay.
no conspiracy theory could tie this to the Ukraine war, could it?
Oh, could Putin have? Uh,
Is this a disconnected, natural disaster?
right. Or could it be dolphins working for the KGB?
Answered my question.
um, yeah. By the way, who was it? Nikola Tesla. Was get in the late in the late days of his life was getting into that kind of harnessing electricity to cause earthquakes and things like that. These kind of amazing fringe concepts of harnessing electricity as a geological weapon of some kind. Or you could,
There is research out there to harness the elements in warfare. So I would think that we're pretty much farther along than Tesla, but a good memory one on
yeah.
that one, Tyler.
Heaven forbid anyone ever get control of lightning on a mass scale. Um, that could certainly be very handy for the Ukrainians right about now. But Okay.
The Vikings had that one. How do you think we dominated the world?
Yeah, that Thor's hammer. Yeah, I remember. So, is there any other Ukrainian related stories since we met last time?
How is Odessa doing? Have there been any development there? I can't find anything fruitful.
Right, me neither. And that's good news. No news is good news when it comes to Odessa today. And I saw,
General sentiment,
yeah,
Tyler. I spent quite a lot of time in Piotr's fantastic room, just listening in. So my meta news is a little bit less news is good news, but also there's some optimism of some sort of deal being struck, just generally from what's being heard across the board. But that's just my kind of meta news, if you like.
I believe Putin.
Yeah, I heard that too. And I have one question for you before you respond, Tyler. What if I saw this on Twitter? What if a peace is brokered today, combined with the Fed hike being less than expected? What would that do?
The markets would rally like wildly. Well, they kind of are, by the way, today. Maybe they're rallying on preemptively on the hopes that either of those things happen.
Yeah, it's going to be wild if that does happen.
Yeah, you could see a 20 point spike over on a lot of the major stocks. You could easily see. I mean, because they've been punished. Many companies have been punished severely due to this Russian invasion of Ukraine. And if that turns around on a dime, you could see in some of the biggest single day gains we've ever seen.
I'm no longer an expert. I haven't been a professional trader for a couple of decades now, but my guess is that the markets have already discounted some of the worst cases, and then anything that isn't those worst cases panning out will see a recovery, a
Right.
rebound. So that would be
And
my thought, rather than
well, that's
having to actually
by the
have
way,
bad news.
this is
A lack of bad news is good enough for the market.
right, but that would be enough to if Putin plays that right. If if he bets the farm on a peace deal, he could have the world's largest single day gains if he. But at the same time, he might be cut off from participating. Although he's got the oligarchs all over the world, interesting. I mean, that I love the whole concept of like insider influence, where Putin could theoretically move the markets up tremendously quickly, and knowing that he could, would then take positions in advance. And why wouldn't he could make billions? I mean, tens of billions, maybe even hundreds of billions if he played his cards right by making a peace deal. Anyway, but
this guy stopped COVID, and now he's going to rally the world economic system that we
right,
have. This is amazing.
And then he would short oil.
right, exactly right. Yes, the other I saw two interesting things since we arrived yesterday about Ukraine. One was the Kremlin or Putin was claiming that Zelensky and Ukraine are not sincere in their willingness to come to a compromise. And I understand how disturbing that phrasing is. And everybody on Twitter was keen to highlight just how kind of tone deaf that kind of phrasing is coming from the Kremlin, that they somehow have some expectation that Ukraine will settle or something. So there was that, which makes me think that the peace thing isn't necessarily on the horizon. And then the second thing that I saw was a piece from CNN of American experienced soldiers from Iraq and Iran and Afghanistan who were training Ukrainian forces in a kind of systematic way how to do ground tactical warfare, because now they're going into that stage where it's no longer tanks on the outskirts. It's now going to be more hand to hand, bunker type guerrilla warfare uh, in inner cities. And the question is,
In Piotr's room, it's referred to as urban warfare,
right,
and it's supposed to be something Moscow is particularly bad at.
right. Well, it's something that the home field always has a severe advantage in, anyways. And that the question is, will the Ukrainians have the appetite to do that? And I got all the confirmation I needed watching the videos today of these guys getting trained in doing this and creating a hierarchy amongst all the people who are being trained, who's good at it, who can lead the different squadrons, everything else. They're getting very organized on ramping up the next stage of this, which is makes it, make no mistake, if the Ukrainians do this, precisely what I'm describing, which is this holding down building by building, so that Putin must annihilate and take a building down to the ground to make any gain. If the Ukrainians fight guerrilla style, there'll be nothing left to win, and the Ukrainians will essentially win just out of sheer determination if they keep that up for a long time. This, by the way, is what happens. This is precisely the Vietnam issue, the Russian and American Afghanistan issue, which is the small guy it's been shown, if the small guy playing at home on their home field advantage, if they have the will, can outlast the world's biggest armies. So if the Ukrainians are up for it, and it certainly seems like they are, then there's just absolutely no way Russia is going to be able to force this unless they start using what were the chemical weapons to kind of annihilate everybody and preserve the buildings, because that's one thing chemical weapons can do, is it can eradicate people like rats and keep the buildings intact. And let's pray to God that's not the plan. So those were the two things that I saw since we met last. Anybody
That's
else?
assuming that Putin's goal is to take over Ukraine versus the possibility that it's all about leverage, getting what he wants. So in that case, all he has to do is focus on the choke points: water, food,
Yeah.
energy. And then his armies don't have to go in and engage in that guerrilla type warfare and just sit, because sooner or later people are going to run out of food. They're heading into the summer, so they don't have to worry about the cold as much. But then it becomes a different kind of waiting game. In the meantime, Ukraine's infrastructure, their exports are gone, and the leverage to go to the negotiating table is different. I don't know what it is, I'll be honest, but it'll be different.
Yeah.
He's facing a lot of that already with his supply chain, though, too, right? Some of the reports are stating the supply chain's not doing a good job of getting food out and stuff like that. So that's being rained down on both sides. That's going to be part of what's going to happen as well.
Yeah, that is going to be an issue, but don't forget, Russia produces food, right? So the supply chain is one thing, but for Ukraine, they're not growing any food. That's a completely different thing.
Okay, so we got to get into the top tech stories then, as we always do.
Oh my God.
But
Tyler, I just remember what's going to happen to the train and the Shinkansen.
you mean the all of the trains in the morning, 5 a.m.?
No,
Yeah, most of the trains are stopped between
not yet. Yamanote is still running until 1 plus.
1 a.m., yeah, until
Yeah.
it stops between 1 and 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, it's a great time for the power to go out. Actually, like if you have to pick a time for the power to go down in Tokyo, you would pick right about midnight, 1 a.m.,
yes.
and you would hope that it comes back on by 5 a.m. When the city starts waking up. And yeah, I think everyone's going to be more or less fine without power through the night, to be honest. Anyway, the big tech story today, the first one is that the iPad Air is a review of the new iPad Air with the new M1 chip. Whatever. The next is that Mark Zuckerberg says that NFTs will be coming to Instagram over the next few months, and that users will be able to mint things within that environment of Instagram, that you'll be able to mint NFTs in Instagram. So this was during, he was speaking at South by Southwest, one of America's premier tech gatherings of geeks. And he confirmed that digital collectibles would be arriving on Instagram in the near term. We're working on bringing NFTs to Instagram in the near term, he said. He didn't detail exactly how that would take shape, but suggested people would be able to show off their existing NFTs and potentially mint new ones. Quote, I'm not ready to kind of announce exactly what that's going to be today, but over the next several months, the ability to bring some of your NFTs in, hopefully over time, and be able to mint things within that environment. Zuckerberg and other executives have previously expressed an interest in NFTs, with Instagram's top executive Adam Mosseri saying the company was actively exploring the technology. Speaking Tuesday, Zuckerberg also said that NFTs could one day play a role in the company's eventual metaverse. Quote, I would hope that the clothing that your avatar is wearing in the metaverse, can be basically minted as an NFT, and you can take it between your different places, he says. There's like a bunch of technical things that need to get worked out before that'll really be seamless to happen. Zuckerberg, who famously used to wear the same gray t-shirt every day, also shared that he now does most of his shopping on Instagram and Facebook. Oh, that's a real subtle little plug for social shopping. Probably most of the stuff that I wear, I probably bought through Instagram. There is a nice little plug for social shopping coming to Instagram and Facebook. And NFTs on Instagram. And I like the idea of any photo that anybody publishes to Instagram in some far off future could be a sort of NFT, because one of the use cases that I think is tremendously interesting would be if, for example, somebody has some Ukrainian war footage of a bomb dropping, or the photo recently of the hospital that got bombed and a pregnant mother being carried on a stretcher. That photo has tremendous journalistic value and monetary value. And this happens quite often during world events, where somebody has captured it in a photo or video in a way that is incredibly useful and valuable. And every journalistic outlet on the planet would love to have rights to further share that image. Now this becomes...
Tyler.
Yes.
If I may,
yes.
This is exactly correct. What Meta is saying, what Instagram is saying, but there's one fundamental step that one needs to take. It's exactly as you're saying. Every single emanation from you and from things that you own should be minted. I mean, could call it an NFT, but what you're really doing is giving it, forget the words NFT, which is just jargon. Just imagine that you called it a self-evident truth as attested to by Tyler, or Tyler at, or Tyler Crowley at, or whatever, the name of the identity is that you have. So everything in the world, even if it's words that are quotes of Mark Twain or of Einstein, those words, although they're not owned by anyone, when you put that form of words together, to understand is to know what to do, for example, that becomes a saying of Einstein. Now, if Einstein wanted to own that, he could publish that form of words, and he could effectively claim to have coined that term. And it's only really valuable or extremely valuable when you add Einstein's signature to it, in the same way as Picasso did a doodle on a napkin and asked $40,000 from the person who asked for it, and those sorts of stories. So at the heart of the NFT is really identity. And for something to be valuable, it needs to have provable provenance. And so what everyone should understand is that the critical thing is that whatever you publish, if it's a picture that you took, if you can prove it and you can approve the GPS signature, so you can prove that you really did take it in Ukraine, and you really, all of those things become provable, and then you can monetize it because you can claim to be the owner rightly, and you can prove that you're the owner rightly. And so what Meta are saying and what Zuckerberg is really saying is that the technical problem they have to get to is that everything needs an identity. Everything needs a unique identity. And then the question is, do you want that unique identity owned by Meta? Do you want it owned by the government, or do you want it owned by yourself? That, that's where we're going, and that's what's happening. It's exciting to hear you talk about.
Yeah, I know from a journalistic standpoint, because I have relatives who are professional journalists who are constantly chasing down permissions from, pieces of content that they would like to remunerate that person on their fair terms, and that person cannot scale. Your cousin Willie, who takes an amazing photo, cannot handle 1,000 requests within a 24-hour period and broker all of those deals simultaneously. It's just not possible. But those.
So imagine that you took that photo, you
Yeah.
signed it,
Yeah.
Tyler at, you created it as a token, or as a unique thing, however you want to publish that, right? And you say that the right to reproduce it is 5 cents, for example. You can establish that picture can be paid for with your token, or with USDC, or with USDT, or digital yuan, or whatever it is that you want to denominate that in, and that picture then is effectively an annuity, because anytime anyone publishes it, they have to pay the license, and it will be self-evident if they haven't paid the license, which means that you can just have an AI service that goes after publishers that have not paid the license fee, because it will be easy to detect that. You see? So everyone will be a publisher. It will be the natural endpoint of user-generated content of Web 2 will become user-owned content of Web 3.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Would you want to LLC any of these NFTs?
You will be able to create any legal structure that the regulatory authority imposes upon you. So if art is excluded by the SEC, then you'll be fine. If you need to do a Reg D registration, a Reg A registration, whatever is the nature of the thing and the way that you're selling it. So if you try to sell it to the general public as art, that's one thing. If you try to sell it as an investment that's going to go up, the regulator will take a different look at you. This is really very exciting. It's happening very, very, very fast.
Okay. I have a bunch of Ukraine-related articles to run through real quickly. One is from Jeff G. from the BBC about the Western brands that are unable to leave Russia. As many firms look to withdraw from Russia, some are unable due to complex deals arranged in the country. Marks and Spencer, Burger King, and hotel groups Marriott and Accor are restricted by complex franchise deals, preventing them from withdrawing. The firms have outsourced the Russian businesses to third parties and do not own the operations bearing their name. Together, the firms have almost 1,000 outlets still open in Russia. Marks and Spencer's has 48 shops. Burger King has 800 still open, while Marriott and Accor have 28 and 57 hotels, respectively. The BBC understands that brands are locked into legal franchise agreements, making it difficult for them to remove their name from Russian high streets. There you go. Meanwhile, Burger King's owner, called Restaurant Brands International, also told the BBC its restaurants are run by franchisees. These long-standing legal agreements are not easily changeable in the foreseeable future, it said. It is understood, yeah. Well, they could stop supplying them because I have friends who are McDonald's franchisees and a whole lot of Yogurtland franchisees, and basically they continue to buy the branded supplies from the mother organization. That's part of the franchisee deal, which is you're going to buy our napkins and our cups and our burger wrappers and all of that. And the mother brand could stop providing all of that, which would make the local franchisee appear to be illegitimate and make it a little more difficult to operate.
Hey Tyler, I read something from
That
another
wouldn't
guy
that
that I
violate?
follow. Another guy I followed, Nick Giambruno, and when we talk about the escalatory ladder for nukes, there's also the escalatory ladder in terms of like the economic warfare. And so he says that perhaps the most significant escalatory move economically, the Russian government has allowed all external debt obtained from unfriendly countries, estimated at about 400 billion, to be redenominated in rubles. So yeah. And so as a result, instead of paying back creditors in the US and Europe in dollars and
At what
euros and
rate?
Western banks,
At what exchange rate?
well, I don't know. But the Russian companies can now repay their external debts by depositing rubles on their creditors' behalf in Russian banks, which are inaccessible to them because of
Damn right.
sanctions. So this,
Means nothing. Yeah. That is some real shenanigans. I mean, it's borderline mafioso like behaviors where they're taking over the planes and hoping that China will make fake replacement parts and nationalizing businesses and their trademarks and the debts, and it's like he's going all in because
well, it's like it's like we talk about. It's a chess match. So what it does is this move forces the US and EU to either ease sanctions so that the estimated $400 billion in external debt can be repaid, or give massive losses to Western banks and other creditors. So yeah, it's economic warfare, absolutely.
right, he's trying to push the pain back on the other parties. And my point is, but by doing that, he's delegitimizing Russia as an investable territory forever.
But
If
again,
you went
he's
through the
got that.
Russia
Remember,
crisis,
when we talk about like, okay, Nicholas, you like the macro move, so this is part of that, right? Because that part of the world, it's all the BRIC countries are not sanctioning the guy, right? You've got India, China, Brazil. These are huge markets, and you got Saudi, who's now going to be repricing their oil in yuan. It's like it is this shift of a different money, like geographically by money, as Nicholas, you talked about the internet. So we're in the middle of this dominant paradigm shift, and this is part of it. So if I'm not agreeing with what he's done, but in a chess match, why wouldn't he make that move, right? Why wouldn't he?
this has been my point since day one, and we've been talking about it in this room for a year, or well, probably a year, and it is the end of the dollar hegemony.
Yes.
The ascent of the third way, Bitcoin, etc., showed that there was a $1 trillion economic system that can exist outside of the dollar. This is exactly where the Chinese understood, and they went with their digital yuan. I know people talk it's not a blockchain. We're not talking about whether it's a blockchain. This is about there will be three systems. The SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which includes India and all of those countries to the east that are not complying with the West in this case, and we're trying to put pressure on China. That's why from the beginning, when people were saying, oh, this is not about Russia and China, it was like 100% this is going to be SEO-based financial system, Western-based financial system, and a meta financial system that is the Internet of Value. That is what is going to happen. It's crystal clear, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think Nicholas raises a really good point. Let's not forget about Evergrande, and China has their own digital currency too. So it's the perfect time to split, drain the other side, take what you can, and then start your own and walk away.
Okay, so
Hey,
then
Tyler, it's Ken.
And you need a big liquidity provider, which Russia becomes a giant liquidity provider and energy provider to that currency. They've been trying to move away from dollar trading of commodities and especially oil for many, many years. This
Like
is the
10 years at
opportunity.
least.
mhm. Ken, go ahead.
Yeah, but forgive me because I'm driving. Um, okay, I'm on the right street actually. Okay, yeah. What I was going to say, Tyler, is two things. In terms of McDonald's, I think if the parent company stopped supplying the wrappers and the cups and all of that, they might be in breach of the franchise agreement themselves, and then the franchisees might say, okay, we're not going to pay royalties, or we're not going to be subject to some other provisions of the agreement, like area protection and stuff, like what we can open. So I think it's a double-edged sword. I mean, it
Yep.
depends on what the deals are, but I mean, I don't think it's that that easy for the parent company to just say we're not supplying you anymore per the franchise agreement.
Right.
On that one, can I say something, Ken?
Yeah, there's a second point I wanted to make, and then you can say whatever. And I'm trying to remember the second. Actually, at this point, I think I forgot the second point. So go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Tyler, I know a while ago you or someone said, and just to add a little levity, the seeing a McDowell's someday in Russia will be possible. You
Yes.
know, because they can change the menu. I mean, pretty soon we'll see Mech Borscht and Mech Pierogi and, the big whatever coming after that. But they're going to try and keep them open, and they may not be able to. It'll be very interesting because McDonald's equipment is very, very particular. So if they run out of certain things, because it's not like a grill, an old bar and grill where you can just heat up the grill and cook whatever in a McDonald's. So it'd be very interesting to see how they adapt if this thing goes on for a while.
Robert, that ice cream machine that never works.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not a real McDonald's if the ice cream machine's working, though, is it? So
So Tyler, yeah, I just
that
remembered
that
my
will be,
second
but
point when I was mentioning it.
that will be the real tell that it's a copy McDonald's, is that the ice cream machine's working consistently.
I
Uh,
bet you their ice cream
You're not
machines are
allowed
going
to
to work
repair it,
better.
remember? Remember, you can't repair it with your own parts. They proved
no, but
that in
there's a
Norway.
massive lawsuit going on about that right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They prevented the Canadian licensee from, I think it was Canadian, from replacing parts.
I feel
So
like this is a good time to squeeze in a really quick joke that I saw online. It's like a meme joke. Russia has already been cut off from CNN, Pornhub, and Facebook. The US is now working on depriving Russians of McDonald's and Coca Cola. If they keep going on with these sanctions, Russians will soon become among the healthiest, well adjusted, and best informed people on the planet. Sorry.
That's a good one.
That's
Healthy and
funny.
well informed. I don't know.
well, on that's a perfect segue to the next article, Thomas. I
Hey,
believe.
Tyler, can I
Yeah.
just quickly remember? I just quickly remembered my
Okay.
second point. And, I'm quick with these things. In terms of whether investors will lend to Russia again, I'm going to tell you the fixed income markets have a really short memory
Okay.
on a lot of things. And you think there would be a lot of things they wouldn't lend to, and then a couple of years go by, and you offer them another half a basis, what we call half a basis point, maybe in their case, maybe a whole point or a point and a half, which is like 1.5%,
Yeah.
more than whatever that should otherwise be, and they're greedy and they say, oh, we know they did all these bad things, but that was 5 years ago, and we can make a little bit extra interest. I've seen that in so many things.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
I'm not going to debate that one. You're exactly spot on with that. I want to get into
One
the.
more thing, Tyler.
Yeah.
Just 2 seconds. Imagine as the logical next step that Russia forces Europe to pay for its energy imports in rubles.
Hmm. Yeah. It seems like they're going to wean themselves off of the Russian oil, anyways. Um,
It's going to
that
take time.
yeah, it'll take time. So the next article's from Jeff G from the BBC. It's only 2 hours old, and I just pinned it to the top of the clubhouse room. It says Russia's state TV is hit by a steady stream of resignations when Marina Ovsyannikova burst into Russian living rooms on Monday's nightly news denouncing the war in Ukraine and propaganda around it. Her protest highlighted a quiet but steady stream of resignations from Russia's tightly controlled state-run TV. Ukrainian president has thanked her, appealing to anyone working for what he calls Russia's propaganda system to resign. Any journalist working in what he calls the fourth branch of power risks sanctions and an international tribunal for justifying war crimes, he warns. Wow, that's heavy. Some
Many
of
of them are actually leaving the country first and then resigning.
yeah. Well, fair enough, right? Yeah, because if they could get in deep shit if they do it before leaving the borders. Ukraine. Some of Russian President Vladimir Putin's biggest cheerleaders on state-run TV have already faced sanctions, including Vladimir Solovyov, who presents a talk show on Russia's biggest channel, Russia One, and Margarita Simonian, who has accused anyone ashamed of being Russian at this point as not really being Russian. Russian state-run channels are required to toe the Kremlin line. So who has quit in response to the war? Hours after Marina's on-screen protest, 3 resignations came to light. Channel One's colleague Zana Agalovka quit her job as Europe correspondent, while 2 journalists have left rival NTV. So you've had 3 since that, and then the former chief editor of RT, Marina Baranova. So you've had 4, and it's potentially still early days. Let's see how that continues to evolve. So the next one is going back to the big headlines for a minute. The next one's from Bloomberg, that Foxconn resumes partial operations at 2 Shenzhen campuses, which were closed on Monday, one of which makes iPhones, after authorities approved its closed loop process. So I guess they've found a way to quarantine while they work. There you go. That's some Chinese efficiency for you right there. Why throw the baby out with the bathwater when we can quarantine you at your cubicle? How's that sound? Again, you have to admire it. The next is that Microsoft says an ad in Windows 11 File Explorer was not intended to be published externally and was turned off after a Microsoft MVP found it in the latest build. Okay. Facebook launches something called Family Center, a suite of parental supervision tools for its apps, starting with Instagram in the US and rolling out globally in the coming months. Which, by the way, you know how much I love that, because now they've given you the tools as the parent in the Family Center. It has a name. It's called Family Center. It's ideal for parents who, give a shit, which you don't. So your kid is going to continue to consume garbage endlessly, but now it's your problem, and it's your fault because the tools are there for you to use on a silver platter, but you won't. And they know you won't. But now they can firmly place the responsibility back on the parents because the Family Center exists right there in the middle of the app. You can no longer complain about how the content your kids are seeing on their platforms. It's now your responsibility, you lazy sack of you-know-what. And you're never going to do anything about it. Because you never were going to do anything about it. Because you're a shitty parent. And now they just called your bluff. But, end of debate. They just dropped the rope while you were tugging, and you just fell into the pool of endless parental crap. Genius move. That's all they had to do was build the tools and say, gotcha. Here's Family Center, parental control center for you to take complete control of everything you don't like about our platform. Have fun. We know you'll never touch it.
I love that because
Tyler, I
Xbox
think
has
I'm gonna.
family. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was gonna say Microsoft actually has a family time because I get up. Well, my son's way too old now, but when he was younger, um, there's a feature with Xbox and Microsoft called Family Time, and I can see the amount of time my son has spent on the Xbox and on what games, and if he was just spending time just chatting or he was playing Call of Duty or whatever. So that's nice. They have. I mean, my son's way too old now, but that I love that.
But I think I'm
Uh,
gonna push back because I think we all are assuming that every parent is first of all tech savvy. Second, a lot of people, the majority of American, the average American, they make like really less than like what 30,000, 40,000. I think they are all very very busy trying to make ends meet and having two three jobs. They really are not doing these things. So the kids are much, much more tech savvy. My niece, as soon as I get to the house in Canada, oh my God, she grabs my phone and God knows which game she finds out. And she was like 5. And she knows everything. And in fact, even setting up Zoom meetings for her mom. And her mom is a nurse and really doesn't bother with the tech stuff unless you really really have to. So I mean, she's a single mom and doing shift work. She's not gonna monitor every single thing. So Tyler, really, it's not like we need to know how people live their life and how many people are struggling to just survive. So it's not easy to be able to be knowledgeable about all these techs and tools and other things to be able to control all that.
I
and
What?
mean,
Messi, I'd like
oh,
to.
Wait,
good,
hang on,
Ben.
Matthew. So
I'll
what
let
you're
you go, Ben.
proposing, what you're proposing is Mark Zuckerberg come to your house and set it up for you. Is that what you're proposing?
No, I'm not saying that, but Mark Zuckerberg shouldn't have bad things for kids. That's all I'm saying. When we grew up, well, I am a computer science major. I graduated with that. And there wasn't that much of a problem. We use all these tech and platforms for good. Now the problem is the users, the amplification of hate speech and pornographies and other things are just out there. Mark is making it so easy for people to have bad things access to it. That's all I'm saying. Why does Mark give everyone to be able to put so many bad things for society? That's all I'm saying.
You're right. Why can't he be like Uncle G and force everyone to learn Marxism and sing songs about great dear leader? And it's a great point.
Because it's
No,
damned if you do, damned if you
no.
don't. And I will
No,
say,
Tyler, I lived through that type of military regime. I can tell you how devastating that is. In fact, I am way, way far from that. I can tell you how devastating it was for our family, for a lot of families in Ethiopia. We lived through that type of really horrible system for 17 years. So I can tell you from personal experience how awful it is. I'm just simply saying that, giving a platform that can propagate hate speech and make things worse, QAnon and other things. People don't filter those things. They just read them. How many family members, even within us in the US, they will read it and then say how true that is, whether it's true or not. They're not going to do research and say, okay, is it confirmed by reputable research, or is it confirmed by at least by a couple of news and things like that? No, I knew a very distant people who got into the rabbit hole of QAnon and other things, and how Hillary Clinton was going to be eating babies and things like that. That's all I'm saying.
but
Why
Messi,
would
just to let you know, though, I mean, back in the day, it also depends on what type of tech was where you lived. I mean, I don't know if anybody remember AOL and Yahoo chats, the dark circle that used to be in those areas where there was pedos and all sorts of people in those chat rooms. And then going back to your other point about being a single parent, I've been a single parent since I was 24 years old because I got married young. And my husband passed away, and I raised two boys on my own, and I was only making 30 and 40K living in the US. So I think it depends on what your aptitude is and what you have time for and who you are as an individual on how much you can give your child. I literally, by hook or crook, did everything to make sure I spent time with my boys because I have two boys as a single mom. And I'm very active in their tech spaces and whatnot, and they fully expect it. So I think it's one, the relationship you have with your kids, the relationship you have with tech, and how you build your life as a single parent, because my thing is with Mark, he only can do what he can do. He's given the tools. Now, whether you use those tools, that's on you. And because, most of his people are here in the US, he can only, he can't turn stuff off. So it's literally damned if he do, damned if he doesn't. He takes it all away, there's a problem.
No,
If he puts it all
I,
there, there's a
I,
I
problem.
fully
I want to
disagree
challenge
with
it.
that.
But
I
that's how it
really,
is. But me as a single parent, it is possible that you can be affected. It just depends on what your environment is. So I don't want to place everything on the tool, because us as humans, we should be able to use the tool as a tool, and that's it.
I have a
Or,
Can
different
I add
or,
a
perspective.
or opt
dimension
out.
as a single parent
You're
that
ignoring
is
the
not being factored in?
one major
L,
consideration. It's totally opt-in. Facebook and Instagram are a fully opt-in system that
Yes.
you need not opt into. And if you do, then it's on you to protect yourself.
Tyler,
But
can
the
I challenge that logic for one
Sure,
second?
sure.
I am a single parent as well. I opt in. I love my kids, but I live in a state that unless I accuse my ex of being a witch, I will not force and compel and coerce the court without evidence to do anything detrimental that she doesn't agree to. AKA, I am this subservient custodial parent unless I fight over it. And I've seen enough outcomes. I spent 10 years as a financial planner that I'm not going to fuck with my kids and do that. I've seen enough single parent situations. So, with all respect, Elle, your situation lost a variable. It's called control. And
I
I
don't
think
I, I don't
the
understand what
promise
your
of the
point is. Anything,
decentralized future, just let me finish. The
yeah,
promise of a
explain it.
decentralized future is that you can use the tools that are available and that you rise in a meritocracy to this best point. But what about that wage worker that Messi's talking about? Or not a wage worker, a shift worker, someone has stress levels. And look at Robert Sapolsky's work on stress and how it inhibits cognition. And people can't think long term. People can't think creatively when they don't have any tool set up to monitor their own cybersecurity. Do you think they're really looking at their kids' Xbox use? It's and when you're a single parent, you are also susceptible to the boundaries that may not be set because it is an opt-in world by your ex, by someone else. So if we design the future to be in a Jonathan Rawls, let's lift the veil, let's cut the crap. If we want to have equality in meritocracy, then maybe we should consider the people that haven't made every perfect choice along the way. That we have to think about designing a system for the people that are least among us and that aren't perfect people, that aren't the people that rise to Greenspan's frothy foam, but the people that never even get from a submerged status to treading water. And I'll
So
finish
then
there.
you should apply that to there should not be. So I don't want you to assume that you know my entire situation. So I'm not going to tell my entire story about how I work and whether I was a shift worker or not, because I don't feel as though that's relevant. However, I would like to say there is no perfect situation or no perfect solution.
I
We
don't
should be,
control the
hold on,
environment
wait a minute, David.
75%
I'm not,
of the time that my
David,
kids are
wait
somewhere
a minute.
else. Go ahead.
All right, wait a minute. Let me finish. Like I let you finish. We're going to all be polite here. So, as I was saying, we should not, we should be striving for progress and not perfection. Not everything is going to be exactly the way we want it. And if we solutioned everything to the lowest denominator, it may not work for the rest of society. We can only do what we can. And it's very important because we have freedom of choice. And just like Tyler said, we opt in and out. And it's depending on your situation. They cannot account for every situation that everyone is in. You can only do what you can. And again, it's about progress, not perfection.
David, you can
Yeah,
I
and
respond.
the one thing we have to all
I
remember
think
about these platforms, these are platforms that were designed by people that won't let their children use. So you have to kind of look at that. And when you opt in, you, as a parent, you have the responsibility to be able to understand enough tech to be able to block or monitor your kids' usage of it. Or you don't buy them the Xbox, you don't buy them the whatever device. This is John. I'm done.
Hold on, Messi.
and also,
Messi, Messi, Messi. 1 second,
there
Messi.
is
1 second, Messi. David, did you want to respond? If not, then
Absolutely. Yes, please. I don't want to be reductive into you opt in and you opt out. I was trying to add detail in that I don't get to set the parameters for my own children like other parents may have because I have a very, very minority
shared
control
custody.
over their time.
Right.
So hang on. I am now in a different disposition as it goes to my children.
Right.
And at what age, I just want to respond with this, they're second grade twins. At what age would I keep them on an island from tech by opting them out of these mal-designed platforms mostly? I'm not a Marxist here. I'm just trying to,
Yeah.
I've been a software developer and an engineer. I know corner cases are tough, but the ethics are where the corners are.
Yeah.
And let's talk about that. That's what this whole room is for.
You bring up
But
a really
let's
interesting
assume
point,
you don't
by the way.
have control.
Sorry to interrupt. Sorry to talk over you, but I actually love the point you're raising about um, joint custody. I was raised. I had equal shared cut. My parents had. I had parents that I spent half my time with my mother and half the time with my father separately. And you're right that I didn't quite empathize with how challenging that is, especially if you are concerned about especially now. I don't think it was as big of a deal in the 70s and 80s as it is now, because now you do have to, kids have much more access to a lot more through the internet, and parents might have different values and ideas about what is allowed and not allowed in terms of device usage and everything else. That's a really interesting point.
Yeah, and I'll
And
just
divorce.
leave it with, I don't want my kids to be Luddites because I'm trying to protect their eyeballs. Here's what I've done. I've personally curated for a decade, they're not even that old, YouTube playlists of previously censored, completely not QAnon STEM education, because there's a shit ton of it out there. We just have, as a society, really bad skill at teaching how to filter out bad ideas. So I have to personally curate for my kids. And then now that they're born, I know what my son likes and I know what my daughter likes. And I'm a parent again. I have to personalize to my kids. But but I just wanted to leave it as, we don't always decide what the marginal person we meet, what their background is. So let's plan for their backgrounds being not um, being actually what the dystopia of the internet really is composed of: a bunch of porn, possibly drugs, possibly run into a bunch of people that have addictions, and let's just be honest with them. And when my kids get to those ages, I'm going to be honest with them too. I have a no lie policy with my kids, and it's getting really hard with the internet, especially with us turning into world war discussions. But death is actually part of life.
This
Okay.
just leads into a parenting discussion, which I don't want to take away from tech news because we talk about parenting and critical
But
thinking and stuff
parents
all the
parents
time.
are on these
But that makes
platforms.
sense.
Kids are on these
No, I know
platforms.
they're on this
Let's talk about
platform, but I was just saying I wasn't gonna. I don't want to take away from the
Yeah.
rest of tech
I,
news and
I,
stuff. Go
Amen.
ahead, Tyler.
I
Yeah,
appreciate
because
it.
we've been doing that a lot
Ella, I
lately.
only responded to a
No, no,
situation where
David,
it.
you're
No,
single
not going
parents
that
are
she,
deep.
not
no,
I was just
always in
saying.
control of their kids'
I
eyeballs.
I have a
David,
quite a different
she's
perspective.
very, Elliot, I thank you for doing that, because we have a tendency, uh, I say we, but particularly myself, of going down the parenting rabbit hole, and thank you for helping us avoid it this time.
No
David,
problem.
it has nothing to do with your points. Honestly, it's our own proclivities for wanting to go down the parenting rabbit hole that she's keenly aware of. With
Sure,
it,
sure, sure. I don't want to go down it either, but I live in a state that uses access to as a cover for removing rights. So maybe I can turn the mic over to Nicholas on that one.
Yeah, and if I can jump in here just for 30 seconds before you get off the parenting thing, it's there's this well known African, and Messi, I'm not going to say it properly, but it takes a village, and so the use of tech, the equity in tech, it's not just parenting, it's how we have a personal responsibility and a social responsibility. So I think some of the richest conversations this room has hatched has been in this kind of context. But thank you so much. I understand if you don't want to go deep into it, though, for sure.
I think
You
Ben.
know, the only thing I think about these discussions are, have the discussion, but it's just my opinion. I think we can bring up our opinions and discussions without tearing somebody else's approach and opinion down. Just
Okay,
put it out there, and whoever takes it, and just move on.
I want to see, Ben was trying to jump in, I believe.
Yeah, hi, Dad. So similar to you, I was brought up by two separate parents. My dad used to let me watch whatever I liked. I remember renting 18 horror movies probably at 12 years old, and didn't seem to. I still seem to be functioning in society. My mum was a lot more
Let me guess.
restrictive.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yes, I definitely remember that one. um, watched it recently. It's kind of pathetic now looking back at it.
Yeah,
But
it's
so
amazing how those special effects did not age very well. Yeah.
no, some of them really didn't. So look, this might be survivor bias, and I might be a terrible parent, but I've got a 13-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son. We don't. Well, they're unschooled, so they're educated at home, but we don't even really specifically educate them. They just live their lives, and it seems to be working really well. Certainly, my 13-year-old is very functional and comparative to everybody else. So, but we don't worry about these things at all. Don't worry about my 8-year-old being on social media by being bullied by 13-year-olds in a VR game. He just tells them to fuck off in those words, and don't try and bully me. And I've had enough. Whatever. He just stands up for himself. I think there's an element of I would feel it a failing in parenting for myself if I was worried about what my kids receive at any age. They know. At 7 years old, my son would come in and watch a violent film we're watching and go, I don't want to watch this. It's not good for my brain. And he'd walk out again. Cool. Doesn't want to watch it. He knows what he wants. So I just think to Messi's point, there is an element where we can, I believe, I mean, we're there, we're around them 24/7, right? So we're close by, but we don't monitor internet access, block internet access, prevent them watching anything, restrict any amount of time. If they want to spend 14 hours in a day on the computer, all cool. They tend to create most of the time rather than consume. Certainly my son does. So I'm just saying I'm hearing people stressing about it, and maybe for good reason. But from my very weird perspective, and we have a different situation to a lot of people. Our kids are very capable of self-monitoring, self-organizing, and filtering. The important thing is not what goes into their eyes or ears, but I think the response, emotional or otherwise, that they have to it. And I think that by trying to imbue them with so much honesty, we swear liberally around the house, even whatever age they are, and so forth, so that they are inoculated to what goes on the outside world, and I think it's working, and I'm not stressed by what they're likely to come across. I'm very capable. My daughter at 4 years old, when we were in Barcelona, we said, "Look, you don't go out of our sight." She goes, "Why not?" We said, "Well, somebody might try and take you away." She goes, "Look, Daddy, don't worry, I've got this. Somebody comes in near me, I'll kick them in the balls." And that would be her type of attitude, even at 4. And I don't know. I just think there's a space here for imbuing the kids with the ability to do their own filtering. And I know at some age that's not possible, and their brains aren't ready for it. But I'm alarmed by how, when you give them the ability and almost basic complete freedom, how much self-responsibility and self-sovereignty they seem to be generating. Again, I might be survivor bias. We might be a very weird situation, a very privileged, or maybe we're not. Maybe we're the opposite. Maybe we're failing, and both kids will end up mass murderers. Who knows? It's too early to tell with this experiment. But certainly, so far so good with not worrying about any of this stuff.
All my life, my dad told me I was hatched. I love my dad. He was a good egg.
Okay.
Back to tech.
Yes, here we go.
Yeah.
So, the Wall Street Journal, Valerie found one from the Wall Street Journal, that using a new cyber tool, Westerners have been texting Russians about the war, and a website developed by hackers is a new tool in the West's battle to counter Russia's propaganda campaign, as apparently Polish hackers have figured out a way to help get real news, quote unquote, into Russians who are kind of suffering from a media blackout of sorts. That's an interesting evolution of that drama. And the next big tech story of the day is that the FBI and the CISA warn that Russian state-sponsored hackers accessed an unnamed NGO's network by exploiting protocols. But it doesn't say which NGO, which is a shame because that could make a huge difference if it's based on who it is. The FBI says Russian state-backed hackers gained access to a NGO cloud after enrolling their device as part of that network. Okay, well, who is it? That could be a big problem if it's like, if they know, if they have. It depends on what's in their database, honestly. Google says Steam Launchpad is now in alpha on Chromebooks. Okay, Google details. They're ramping up their gaming stuff with Google details something called Stadia plans, including letting developers offer trials and port Unreal Engine and Unity games more easily, and white label cloud gaming services. So Google's going deeper into the game space. The next is that Spotify signs a sponsorship deal with the Barcelona Football Club, including rebranding the soccer club's stadium to Spotify Camp Nou, reportedly worth $310 million over 4 years. With Spotify getting into sports. And a major sponsorship deal with a premier team. That's interesting. Next is at Google Domains, where you can it's kind of Google's version of GoDaddy or what have you, launches out of beta in 26 countries after just being in beta for only just a short 7 years. So Google Domains is now live after 7 years of beta, offering more than 300 domain endings and around-the-clock customer support from real people, as opposed to those robots over there at GoDaddy. The next is Montreal-based job search portal Talent.com raises $120 million. And something called Hex Trust, which offers crypto custody, staking and brokerage and financing services to institutional clients in Hong Kong and Singapore, raises $88 million. There's a whole bunch of fundraising announcements, like Linktree, which many people are familiar with, just raised $110 million at a $1.3 billion valuation. As Messi says, a Kenyan-based B2B company just raised $125 million at a $625 valuation. And Forbes has an article which says it's about Ukraine's invisible heroes, the internet technicians who are risking their lives avoiding bombs and thwarting Russian hackers to keep Ukraine online, fixing internet bombed out buildings. And Congress divided over passing a national privacy law. Tech industry groups are lobbying Utah and other states to pass privacy laws weaker than California. And what else do we got? 6 months after El Salvador adopted Bitcoin as legal tender, dozens of citizens, economists, and developers detail cracks in the country's crypto revolution. El Salvador prepares to launch its Bitcoin bond, and everything didn't go absolutely perfectly the first time around, so this journalist is making notes of the minor faults in this incredibly, insanely ambitious effort. And it didn't go perfectly, so we got to highlight, we can break out the magnifying glass and find out all the ways they screwed up. But I got to say, net, it's still up and running, isn't it? Why take the kind of nitpicky approach to this? I'm not so sure. It's a grand effort and ambition. Let them test it. Great. And kudos. Yeah, you're finding faults. Maybe that'll help inform them. But do that in a positive, constructive way. I mean, don't try and tear the thing down. It's good for the planet that we at least beta test or sandbox the idea of a government having Bitcoin as a currency. Let a tiny little frickin' nobody country, with all due respect, test it. Let them test it. What's the worst that could happen? They're up for it. Let them test it. If it works, great. What are you so afraid of? And who's funding your journalism that you're trying to prevent all of it? Maybe we should look into that. Your dying publication. Anyways, don't get me started on agenda journalism. It drives me insane. So, go ahead. Okay, as China delivery firms... Okay. The next one's from Wired. It says, as China's delivery firms use algorithms to force drivers to work faster, couriers have started to band together and form unofficial unions on WeChat and Douyin. Yeah, that's a natural evolution of human behavior right there. Food delivery drivers are using platforms' data-powered systems, mass WeChat groups, and unofficial unions to fight unfair conditions. Yeah.
This is exactly it. So I've been listening to what everyone was saying all the way back to the kids and everything. And I think that what people, for me, the summation is most people live in the trauma loop. They don't have the free time to supervise. Powerful tools will be used, and individuals will be inoculated from these effects, but large groups will be influenced, because we've seen the perception control that we saw in 2013 with the Brexit and 2016 with the election. So we know that for all that these powerful tools exist, the real dichotomy comes in when you realize that Facebook is acting like a platform and sometimes acting like a protocol and sometimes acting like a publisher. And this sort of mixed metaphors is showing that it's just impossible to regulate. What this example shows is that when people realize the power of Metcalfe's law to communicate and the power of Moore's law to compute, and they realize that Andreessen's mantra is true, that software eats the world, and that software is free and open source, then those drivers can band together and just, they don't need Uber. The only reason we need Uber is, for the creation of that market. The recreation of that market requires identity and information about your MOT, the quality of your car, your record, criminal record, your background checks. Once you can provide all of those, anyone can drive a car, anyone can join the network, just like we could join this conversation on Clubhouse. You could just switch it on and you can see who wants to ride. And by the way, you don't have to be nervous about who's riding with you, because the condition can be that they have to have an identity that is also checked, that you're not taking anyone with a criminal background if that's your decision, right? You could do that in the new networks of the future, and you don't have to give the money to Silicon Valley VCs, and you don't have to give the money to any middleman. All of the profits for those drivers, instead of them getting 80% and then 70% and then paid per hour, they can opt in and they can say, I will drive for this. And that's it. They'll drive for that. And then you can match. All of this is just software, and it's easy to do.
So, Nicholas, I can see where the future is going to be for Uber. Just what's your opinion, given how the world is moving? What's the fate of a company like Facebook?
Look, they've got a massive network effect, which they bought. Let's not forget, they bought the network effect by taking billions and billions of dollars from people like Andreessen and all the VCs. And by the way, I used to raise money for those types of guys. And all that money comes from people like government of Singapore, Norges Bank, Saudi interests, government of, all these different limited partners get behind those general partners. And where do those limited partners get their money? They get that money from you, either through their pension funds, or if you're sovereign wealth, you're getting it through obviously excess value in the nation, right? And that money is then used to essentially trap the network. So it's all for free until you have the network effect. So what I perceive they will do is they will try to provide all the services of Web3, including NFTs and all these features, and try to do it quickly enough that a decentralized version doesn't get going because people don't care for any friction. But the issue that they will have is that Meta cannot give away its business because it has a fiduciary responsibility to its shareholders. So as I said before, the thing that's given me comfort as a decentralized financial, whatever you want to call it, blockchain, crypto, identity, whatever, right? That whole world is about replacing the model that was really the temporary model for the internet, which was that it is an advertising funded network. We have to get away from that because advertising is based on surveillance. And so you've just got these three pools, as we always talk about: state surveillance, corporate surveillance, or you own your agency online, and everything that you own you can prove, which means that if you want to do Airbnb, you could Airbnb your house, you could do everything because you've got payments, you've got escrow, you've got all of the things that really the Web2 company provides at the moment, you will have in free open source software that people can put together. Now, it does sound fanciful, but these things grow from small beginnings. So in our community, we have 10,000 people. 10,000 people is enough people to get stuff done, right? It's things like that. It is going to happen. It has to happen.
Okay, next up. DoorDash launches a gas rewards program to help delivery drivers who hold the company's own Visa card to mitigate the high cost of fuels. You're going to start seeing all kinds of wildly creative schemes from companies to minimize costs as it relates to fuels. And by the way, this massive fuel spike will certainly drive up the costs of all of the delivery services that have become so vogue in the past year. Perhaps to a degree where they're no longer so attractive. Honestly, that could be a really interesting side consequence. Let's see. Slack cuts off access for some customers in Russia without notice to comply with U.S. and international sanctions and its parent company Salesforce's policies. Ouch. Your internal company communications has disappeared.
But Salesforce is owned by a few oligarchs. This was interesting.
Hmm.
Salesforce is publicly traded, though.
Most of Silicon Valley had the investment of a chap called Yuri Milner, and everybody who knows that DST came into almost every major deal of Web 2, and most of that money belongs to the kleptocrat in chief.
The next one from
Salesforce is a publicly traded company under the symbol CRM, so it's not owned by anybody other than whoever has shares. I don't know. Maybe the Russian oligarchs have a lot of
Yeah,
shares, but to my
they have a
knowledge, they're
lot of
not on the
shares.
board.
No,
Are
they're
they on
not
the
on the
board?
board, but it's
Okay,
the thing is that I'm actually working with doing a mapping of all their ownage in companies. If someone wants to join the project, you're free to contact me. I have 440 companies with big shareholders from the oligarchs already in my list.
so the
great.
next
Okay, but
the next one from Politico. Congress is unlikely to pass major legislation to regulate crypto, as Senator Warren emerges as a vocal critic while some progressive embrace the industry. And this is one of the most important topics for some people, is what's the U.S. going to do about crypto? And the EU both are kind of right at the moment of making considerable decisions about the futures of cryptos and bitcoins and what have you.
They were both very friendly overtures. The executive order from Biden was extremely well received by the community, and it seems like the penny has dropped for the American camp that this is the future of finance and that America does need to be at the forefront of this. The question will be, it will all need to be regulated under the US hegemony system, right? That's what that said.
Nicholas,
Within that,
hold on. I have a perfect example of that today. I use Robinhood for just checking on stuff. And today in Robinhood, when I opened it, there was a pop-up warning that if I would like to continue to engage in Bitcoin trading or crypto trading through Robinhood, I must now provide identity verification.
yeah,
Which
I got the same thing from Coinbase, which I rejected
right,
for that.
precisely highlighting how the government's going to control all of the exchanges and apps that operate in their jurisdiction. And so we're going to force apps to be located in interesting territory to continue to operate in truly decentralized fashion.
Well, so you've got that in the US. So there's the US world. You've got the FATF, which is a voluntary financial action task force that regulates all of the countries that work within the SWIFT system. So this is good, general knowledge. So there's that the SWIFT system requires you to do KYC, AML. They talk about terrorist financing. They talk about pedophilia and all of those things which they want to protect against, right? Of course. And we all want to protect against that. But that's the reasoning for their total oversight, which is why we always talk about Twitter having and now going to get into your identity when Stripe is back-ended, gets into your identity. All of those things work for the American system to say you can trade any of this stuff. We'll tell you whether it's a security. We'll tell you whether it's a currency. We'll tell you whether it's a commodity, a utility, software. We're going to tell you what it is. And then we'll tell you what we need from you in order to operate in those 43 countries, right? And there are guidelines, but if you don't follow the guidelines, you get drummed out the brownies. So that's number one. Then you've got the European market. Well, the European market is more evolved because of the GDPR, but the GDPR started giving teeth to the European Union to fight back against the Googles, the Amazons, etc. they've got some issues with that because they don't have a European technology industry, and they're waking up to the fact that actually the blockchain and these technologies are really the evolution of the French philosophies of freedoms. So at the same time, you have the fools who are misunderstanding the technology, which are looking at the sustainability issues instead of trying to other the proof of work. But the problem with that is it just shows they don't understand proof of work, because proof of work is used in all of the internet. So if you try and ban, proof of work, you're basically banning security. So this is a process where they need to be more educated, and you're getting a one-dimensional view from the Greens on what is really a massive win for democracy, because democracy can embrace decentralization and enforce ways to work with the countries. The issue for the Chinese and the Russians is they cannot adopt these technologies. They cannot, because they cannot allow their citizens to have the freedoms to interact in a decentralized way. So if America and Europe gets with the program, they can take on Russia and the SCO and any of those people by actually making the new economy evolve outside of them, right? So that they feel the FOMO. So not only are you, okay, so you're being othered from the SWIFT system, but now you're being othered from the internet, the global internet. And that is something that if the politicians can get it, which is doubtful, or maybe they will, then there is a giant opportunity for Europe. And we'd like to see that happen.
Okay, the next one is that the EU approves Amazon's $6.5 billion MGM acquisition, saying that the deal won't reduce competition as their production doesn't overlap and MGM content is not a must-have, which is kind of a sick burn. So there you have that. And those are the big tech stories of today. Before we get into the tweets, let me refresh the page. I think the big story of right now is that the power is back on in Tokyo, just literally seconds ago.
Yes.
You heard
And I
it.
had a discovery.
What's that?
Life was so bad without my warm seat in the toilet.
Okay.
TMI.
Yeah.
Do you
Yes,
understand
that
what I'm saying?
exactly.
Because it's still cold here, right? So
Sure,
I
sure.
took it
You
for
become a
granted that
Japanese, yeah.
my seat is always warm. But now that just now there was no electricity, so I need to return to nature core, right? Then I realized the cover was so cold. My seat was so cold. I'm like, oh shucks.
Oh my
If
God,
that's
I've heard
not
of first world problems, but
if
wow.
that's not
Exactly.
this is a purely domesticated cat issue that you're.
I
This
know,
is
right?
that
Tyler,
is
that
tech
Like
news.
it's
That is
taken
the
for
tech news story.
granted, right?
No, no, it's
yeah,
tech
but
related
this
because
must up this must
Ch-
up on
ch-
Tyler's list of things that you must have during a crisis.
But
Tyler, I sent
Cheryl,
you
seriously,
you
a
yeah.
back channel message.
But
Cheryl,
seriously, the
go on a road
tsunami
trip
alert
in
is still
France, Cheryl.
on, so looks like it may arrive in the middle of the night for some people at that area, the Fukushima Miyagi area. So hope for the
Hey, Cheryl,
best
you
for
should
that.
try a road trip in France and stop in a so-called service station and see what you're presented with when you want to go to the loo. Yeah,
I think I will not land my butt on the seat.
No seed, it's just a
there's
hole.
no seat. There's a smelly hole you have to squat
Oh
over it.
really?
Yep, in Europe today, it's
The
incredible.
Stone Age style? Oh my goodness.
I'm not sure it's as advanced as Stone Age.
Hey Cheryl, quick question about the earthquake this morning, and
Yes.
I'm glad you're doing well, and we're praying that nobody gets taken out by this tsunami. Just real quick, do you have any pets? Do you have a dog or cat? And if so,
Nope.
did they react?
Nope.
Oh,
No. Okay.
My neighbor has one, but there's no reaction. They
I
don't
love that
bark.
question.
Hmm.
This one,
And
this is one of the most interesting
yeah,
debates in science. I wish Chris Fornoff was here
yeah,
to chime in on this one.
yeah. But the thing is, because I'm in central Tokyo, I'm very far from the epicenter, so I'm not sure. Maybe those pets at the epicenter they may bark
Yeah.
before that. Yeah, I'm not
Usually,
sure. But,
yeah. Usually, all animals, even like horses. I mean, it doesn't matter, but if they're anywhere remotely close, you'll see them act up minutes before. Like
yep,
30 seconds to a minute before. It's weird.
yep. I'm more than 200 kilometers away, so not around this area.
Yep. Got it.
Well, you have
Thank you.
the late night crows in Tokyo, kaidus. It'd be interesting to see what the crows were doing.
Don't
I
waste electricity. Don't take your electricity for granted.
I wonder if this has anything to do with the asteroid that recently apparently crashed into Earth. Because 2 days ago, my family lives in Hong Kong. They felt a small earthquake, so it was very recent.
Japan is on the Pacific Ring of Fire, so it is very, very common here for earthquakes. So
Okay, next up is the tweets. And Katerina shares one about Russia, saying Russia has made a decision on the fate of the U.S. astronaut, and they've announced this decision regarding the lone American astronaut on the International Space Station, that they will be returning that American astronaut back to Earth. And Alibaba hunts for a new South China Morning Post chief as the CEO moves to an NFT spinoff. So Alibaba is looking for a new CEO of South China Morning Post. Okay. And exclusive, who is this one? Reuters says they have an exclusive that Tesla halts work at the Shanghai factory for 2 days amid China COVID curbs. The electric vehicle giant Tesla suspending production at its Shanghai factory for 2 days, according to a notice that went out internally as China tightens restrictions on COVID. Yeah.
Taylor, so back to the South China Morning Post. I think another point here is that Alibaba said this South yeah, it said it's up for sale, so they might be plan to sell South China Morning Post media. I'm
Well,
not sure, but
the government's talking about forcing them to sell to a friendly buyer, a Beijing friendly buyer.
yeah, so they moved the CEO to the NFT business, but at the same time, trying to figure out Alibaba to disconnect it from the South China Morning Post maybe.
Right. The next one, also from Katerina, that a skin biopsy can help identify patients with Parkinson's disease. The presence of a PSIN on the skin distinguishes people with Parkinson's disease from those with Parkinson's symptoms associated with other neurological disorders. That's really interesting. Huh. The next is from Valerie from the Wall Street Journal, that Walmart's technology organization called Walmart Global Tech aims to hire 5,000 technology associates globally this year and open new tech hubs in Toronto and Atlanta. Toronto makes a lot of sense. There's a ton of the top caliber geeks in the world. They're coming out of Waterloo University over there near Toronto. And yeah, so they're going to build a tech hub in Toronto and Atlanta as part of its expansion plans. Walmart getting into tech in a bigger way. And Professor Ossoff has this one, that the U.S. Senate unanimously approves making daylight saving time permanent. The Senate on Tuesday approved a proposal to make daylight saving times permanent, which, if passed in the House and signed by President Biden, will keep the clocks fixed around the all year long, like we do in Asia. And by the way, there's some.
And I believe they do that in Arizona too.
I think you're right. I think Arizona does do that. Welcome back, Michael. And I think there's really good arguments for it reduces energy usage as well if you stay in I believe it's the summer time zone, in the daylight saving time zone. You end up using significantly less energy as a city or as a nation or what have you. So there's a good kind of green argument for doing that.
So the article is to never change time zones, then our time won't change. Is that I
Right.
don't see the article.
We
Okay,
will we
great.
will
That's
we will
awesome.
stay in daylight savings time indefinitely, essentially.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Then actually that's gets me to the end of my tweets. There's one about from CNN that VR headsets are headed to your car's back seat. A company called HoloRide, a tech startup whose promise is turning vehicles into moving theme parks, recently announced at South by Southwest, which is going on right now in Austin, Texas, that it is bringing VR headsets to select Audi SUVs this summer. Okay. As if doing it in your office didn't make you sick already. You can enjoy it. Michael, have you tried doing VR in the back seat of a car? Is that not an ideal recipe for
I, you
seasickness?
know, I've done VR on roller coasters before.
Yep.
Uh, I've never done it in the backseat of a car. The difference is on roller coasters, the action that you're experiencing in VR is synced to the roller coaster, and
Okay.
so you don't get sick when you do it on a roller coaster. But doing it in a car, obviously, it can't be synced to what's happening in a car. So I think that's definitely going to cause a different level of motion sickness for people who already are sensitive to VR.
You're gonna need some mega Wi-Fi too.
Yeah. Fair point.
Hey, Michael, that experience with VR on a roller coaster, could you be a little bit more descriptive for a sec? That'd be interesting to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, imagine, for example, if a VR engineer were to program, say, escaping from a alien planet, and you are, let's say, getting into a plane, an alien plane, and you're climbing up, that would be the lift hill. And then when you launch off the lift hill, in the roller coaster, you'd actually be flying your plane around in VR and getting chased by aliens all over the place. But your plane that you're in would be synced to the track of the roller coaster, and so you genuinely feel as if you're going through this little space battle. I've also done VR on roller coasters where it was actually interactive, and you could shoot back at enemies chasing you around and things like that. It's a pretty interesting experiment. The only thing I don't like about it, and this is a very weird side effect, you the jolt of, like, the thing that makes you laugh on hills on roller coasters, because you can't see that anymore. I think you need the visual part of that in order for it to actually make your stomach sink, because when you're in VR on a roller coaster, you don't get that feeling of, like, it doesn't tickle you the same way. It's really it's a strange side effect. It takes away the tickles, and it kind of, I don't know if your other senses are just overriding that, but it's a very strange effect.
Okay.
Hey,
Thank
Michael,
you.
this is John. Quick question on that. What happens if you're wearing VR and you're of a roller coaster and you're actually on a roller coaster? Have you done that use case yet?
Oh,
That's what
that's exactly what we're talking about.
So you're actually physically on a roller coaster with watching VR?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, sweet. Okay, cool on. Thank
Yeah,
you.
they have there's probably 5 coasters that I've been on around America that have experimented with this. All of them at Six Flags locations, and it's, like I said, it's a very interesting experience. It works flawlessly. However, it does take away the thing I love most about roller coasters, which is that tickle that you get.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, thanks.
okay.
Gravity.
Next up is from Katerina. The headline says, when it comes to sleep, it's quality over quantity. According to Neuroscience News, researchers have identified 5 genes across the genome that enable efficient sleep. And this is from UC San Francisco. These researchers, some people are gifted with genes that pack the benefits of sleep into an efficient time window, keeping them peppy on only 4 or 6 hours of sleep a night, according to researchers at UC San Francisco. In addition, the scientists said these elite sleepers show psychological resilience and resistance to neurodegenerative conditions that may point the way to fending off neurological disease.
Mm.
I actually had, Tyler, last year, I was working on a few projects, and because of the time difference, it was the first time I probably must have seen at least maybe 200 or more sunrises because I hadn't slept. And on average, for the entire year, I probably had about 2 or 3 hours a night sleep only. And it was incredible to see that it didn't affect me. I mean, I had to, based on where I was in Turkey, everybody else's, time zones where they were in Asia, they're in US and Europe. I absolutely, it was the first time this has ever happened to me. And I'm still trying to figure out how it didn't affect me, where for the entire year, literally, I think maybe the most I would have slept was maybe about 4 hours a night. So
You just
there is
figured
something
it out.
to that.
Yeah. So I do not have these genes. I can tell you that much. Um, so, but the whole point of mapping genomes, and which is happening at a rather frequent pace, is going to be incredibly interesting.
I'll tell you on the flip side, if I sleep too much, I'm completely exhausted. There's nothing I can do the next couple of days. Anything more than about, a few hours of sleep. On the flip side of it is also very strange.
I don't. We are wired very, very differently.
Well, I do
Yeah.
know if you
I'm
if
with
you
you,
have
Tyler.
insomnia, read the Federalist Papers. That will put you to sleep. Good
I,
cure
I,
for insomnia.
I can sleep 12 hours straight.
I sleep
You're a
13
fucking
hours
cat,
every
Cheryl.
Saturday. Yeah,
I
Really?
personally
Yeah.
sleep I sleep twice in a 24-hour cycle, so I sleep about 6 hours at night and then about 1 hour in the afternoon every day. So interestingly,
Ben,
yeah.
you and I are more in alignment than anyone else. I think I usually sleep 4 hours at night, and then throughout the day I'll take two 1 hour naps.
yeah. Well,
So
the
just
Spanish
did
would call it a siesta, but sorry, BB, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I mean in Chinese based culture, we normally have the noon nap here. So we here
Mm.
we have a from 12 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. For the rest, and most people will take a nap. And in Thailand, I think as well.
For me, it's almost essential. It took me, I don't know how many years to realize, probably until I was 35, I'm 45 now, that I'm actually used to be really quite grumpy in the afternoons. My whole brain chemistry would change immediately after eating lunch, within 5, 10 minutes of eating lunch. Doesn't matter what lunch, doesn't matter whether it's 100% fat, 100% carbs, 100% protein, doesn't matter what it is. My whole brain chemistry would change and really become quite negative and destructive. And that sleep just transforms everything. All my successes have come in the last 10 years, I think, pretty much in alignment with having an afternoon sleep. So the Spanish would call it a siesta. The geeks would call it polyphasic sleeping. I
But
just call it I
there's
need a
two ways
healthy
of
nap.
looking at that,
Big fan.
Ben. There's two ways of looking at that, Ben. Actually, you could look at the food that you're eating, and you could think that it's your biome. And I would suggest that the next wave of information, so DNA has been instructive. It was obviously far less revelatory than people had thought. Than obviously Watson and Crick had made this great discovery. They were expecting a lot more determinate information. And the new mapping of the biome is about to be upon us. And I think that what one will see is that one can affect. You obviously you need sleep. You need a minimum amount of sleep, but you also need your biome to be healthy because your biome is where you create um, uh, these molecules that assist you in living your best life. So I think that there's another shoe to drop there in terms of sleeping after lunch. If maybe you change your diet, you might have different results as well.
Yeah, possibly, Nicholas, but interesting, and that's fascinating. And I did 23andMe genetics, and that gave interesting information. And when gut biome stuff is widely available, I'll do that, and it'd be fascinating. But interestingly, I've been through nearly every dietary scheme with a lot of discipline you can imagine, from intermittent fasting, i.e., no lunch, to ketogenic diets, to most types of diets I've tried. And it makes very little difference to me which diet, and that's after several months on the diet. It's not just trying it for a few days. I've been vegan. I'm now just kind of eat what I like, fairly intuitively. So yeah.
But the
Anyway,
few,
it's fascinating.
So this is John. This
the
is a space. This is a space I've
pill
been
that you take,
This is a
what you
space I've been
need.
deeply involved in for over a decade. And if you really want to get a good sort of exposition of how this all comes together, there's a book written by a researcher at the Salk Institute called The Circadian Code. It's really quite good and summarizes a lot of this literature. And I highly recommend reading that if you're interested in the space. But, from an evolutionary biology perspective, sleep did not evolve to perform special tasks. Sleep was a way of partitioning your day depending upon whether you're a diurnal or a nocturnal animal, and then all the features and functions that emerged in that downtime were exploiting that downtime. And so we have evolved because of electricity and lights away from the necessity of that pattern as diurnal creatures. And yet we haven't overcome some of the constraints. So what Ben described as a routine nap in the middle of the day conforms to. Um, equatorial kind of evolutionary biology of the human species, where it's hotter than hell in the middle of the day and it's a good time to take a nap, but it's also not exactly safe to be wandering about in the darkness either.
Well, to add on the importance of sleep, or maybe their lack of, that sleep apparently is also important for AI. That if a machine needs sleep, really makes us think how important it maybe is or not.
Well, when you say that, Pauline, if a machine needs, that starts making me feel like, there's this weird thing that I consistently kind of, this is gonna sound weird as fuck and probably not the way to end the day, but I'm always kind of teeter tottering back and forth as to whether or not human beings are not technically just AI. And honestly, I keep teetering back and forth because we're literally energy. We're fucking breathing batteries. And I bounce back and forth thinking about this often, about the computational, like we're computers. We're just the way we operate and function. And there's a lot of things. God damn it, Tyler, we need to do one of those weird ass rooms that we used to do back in the day, because this is making me think about a lot of shit that
What did
from
the
astral
lady?
It's not that
What,
crazy.
but could you please recap for me and remind me the wonderful lady who came into the room who was abducted by UFOs, if I recall correctly?
Oh yeah, I remember her.
God, I wish I remember. I wish I remember who she was.
Could I
Yes.
just complete the thought about the relationship of humans and sleep and downtime and computers? DevOps was created to be able to do downtime and uptime in parallel threads. Engineering that in humans is going to be a little bit more of a challenge than it is engineering that in software and hardware.
Right.
I think that's interesting what you say. The way that I phrase it is that you have a perception field, your five senses plus some inherited learning, which is your input field. And then you have a processor, which is your mind and your consciousness that makes judgments essentially and tries to balance fitness versus the narrative truths. And that brain that you're running is run with 20 watts of power. So one fifth of a light bulb makes for all of that, so it's extremely energy efficient relatively, and you feed it obviously calorific energy, and then you have posterior results, which is culture and ideas and thoughts, etc., that propel you forward. So I think we are the most refined unit of computing power, and that's what gives us our special characteristics as humans.
See, and that's so interesting because, like, it so there's this other thing, and this is leading down a weird ass road. We really do need to do
Michael,
a room
go
about
for it.
this. We really do need to do a room about all this stuff, because I honestly feel like deja vu and certain aspects of sleep. Like, there's this thing that happens with me when I know I'm about to fall asleep, and I do this often, a good 60% of the time. When I know I'm about to fall asleep, like, I can physically feel it about to happen, I will be aware, and I will immediately on the second that I fall asleep, leave my body and start flying around LA. And it's a conscious thing I do. I just fly all over fucking LA. Like, as soon as I feel myself falling asleep, I'm like, you know what? I feel like flying around tonight, and I just do it. And there's these certain things that and someone suggested to me. They were like, "Well, how do you know you're not astral projecting?" And I was like, "Oh, go fuck yourself." And then I started thinking about it, and I was like, "Oh God, fuck myself. What if I am astral projecting?" And there's just all these little thoughts that run through my head. And back to what you were saying, Nicholas, there's another thought that I was having that kind of connects to the whole astral projection thing, which is, and this is maybe a little spiritual, but we are, in my opinion, we're three different beings operating in this whole situation here, because you've got your body, which is literally your computer shell. You've got your brain, which is the CPU, but then you're the user. Like, you're the one controlling the brain, you're operating the brain, which is controlling the body, and
Yeah,
you're the
that's
user.
your consciousness. That's your
Yeah, exactly.
consciousness.
Your
Religious people will
consciousness.
call it your soul.
Exactly. You're the user. And so it's your consciousness, your spirit, that energy that Einstein was connected, like to talk about. And it's really interesting to me that those three those three beings exist in one, and figuring out how to control each of them and how to be in touch with that conscious side of us,
So
and really, just really take control of that inner spirit or conscious, however you want to word it. It's all very weird and connected
so
and interesting. And Tyler, we need to do a room about this.
if you're interested in it, I mean, the subject of consilience is exactly the observation of the unity of knowledge between the social sciences and the natural sciences. That's number one. That's the information I think we'll get out of the internet of value and the coherence of information space in the hands of the public. So that's number one. So we'll get a lot more of that data going forward. But number two, if you want to resolve any sleeping problems and you are interested in the origins of consciousness, which is really what you're talking about, there is a great book that is extremely dense and will put you to sleep after about 10 pages before bedtime, I would say, called, written by a guy called Julian James, and it's called The Origins of Consciousness in the Bicameral Mind. And that's what got me started on being interested in this space and the science and the mathematics and the cryptography and all of the stuff that I'm doing now
Right.
was inspired by understanding that book, and it's really very.
Michael, I think, well, lately I'm doing those things. I also have difficulties usually with sleeping. So one of the things I run into for the last 6 months is I don't know this person, so I'm not doing a plug-in, is Dr. Huberman. Andrew Huberman, and he's, I think, a professor at Stanford University, neurobiology and ophthalmology. It's really, really amazing how our brain functions, how sleep affects how we actually do, how we could learn quickly, our neuroelasticity for learning new things and items. And one of the things that he suggests very cheap and sets our sleeping pattern is when you wake up in the morning, no matter where you are, even if it's really, in the middle of Sweden that doesn't have a sunlight, is to expose your eyes to sunlight outside within 90 minutes of waking up. And apparently, our eyes is part of the brain that came out, during evolution or something like that. So light getting into our brain kind of sets up our melatonin, natural melatonin, so that it kind of sets your brain saying that, okay, this is the daytime. So even on a foggy day, you can get actually enough neurons through your eyes that sets up your brain saying that for the next 7 hours to the first pattern of the day, and another one within 16 hours, and then nighttime, your brain kind of produces its own natural way of sleeping, so that your dopamine will kind of go down, which is the one that helps us learn. When you sleep, it goes down, so you don't want to do other, like, we're addicted to our phones. But if you stop looking into light phones and things like that by 11, and that just 10 minutes to 30 minutes in the morning, getting a natural sunlight through your eyes actually kind of helps. And it's helping me tremendously. So, yeah, he has an amazing, amazing podcast. So, if you have a chance, check him out.
There was
For
actually a
sure.
paper that came out, I think, a few months ago that showed that red light exposure in the morning, specifically 670 nanometers, helped not only improve mitochondrial function and energy production, but also improved eyesight. So there were instances where people's vision deterioration was able to slow down and also reverse itself. So the idea of light being a therapy avenue definitely has been substantiated by modern science. But with respect to what Michael said, there is like the idea of hallucinations before falling asleep is actually quite common and extensively discussed by Oliver Sacks, who famously took a lot of amphetamines and had a conversation with a British spider. So the very entertaining book there called Migraine. So if anyone's curious about that, the nature of the mind is quite interesting.
Okay, we got to wrap
This
up.
feels so old school, Tyler. Like back in the, I don't know how many of y'all were here with us like a year ago, but back in the day, like once a week, we would have these really, really awesome, crazy deep diving rooms into topics like this. And It's really it's been fun diving into this for a minute here at the end of the show today, Ty.
Yeah.
I'd love to do a room about
Yeah,
that
well,
and
one last
consciousness.
comment. One last comment, Tyler, and that is that while every one of our cells has a complete copy of our genetic code, the expression of our genetic code not only varies between cells, but over there's circadian rhythms in every single cell. There are cellular clocks. There's light synchronization of those activities, and the uh, translation of DNA into RNA and protein um, occurs on a radically different pace at different times of day with different exposures to our environment. And so the complexity and the comprehensiveness of the orchestration of our genes in different organs and different cells throughout their circadian rhythm is really profound. So hacking those cycles, I think, is going to be beyond the reach of genetic engineering for probably a century or two. It's just massively complicated.
And of course, you have gene culture coevolution, which makes everything more complicated. So, if anyone's interested, there's another great book by E.O. Wilson called The Social Conquest of Earth, which looks at how eusocial creatures, of which humans are one of about 24, have come to cooperate. And that is, the other big piece of the puzzle. Even if you did have gene ability to manipulate genes, you would still have a gene culture to navigate, which is part of the conscious agent theorem. So if you're interested in that, check out the conscious agent theorem as well.
I
What was
want
the
to.
name of the book?
The book, The Social Conquest of Earth by E.O. Wilson. If you're interested in consciousness, it's The Origins of Consciousness in the Bicameral Mind by Julian Jaynes. And if you're interested in consciousness and how we operate, I would look at Donald Hoffman and his conscious agent theorem. And my theorem, which is the self-sovereign conscious agent theorem, is an amendment of that. So they're all worth having.
Yeah. I want to dovetail and have the final word on this thread. The society. I love your point, Nicholas, of social animal behaviors as kind of a signifier of advanced evolution. In that the plasma of nothingness became the molecules, which joined together to make the atoms, which joined together to make the cells, which joined together to make the very simple single cell life forms, which formed to more complex life forms, some of which have become social, as you say. So, in summary, the plasma became chemistry, became biology, became society, and the society is joining to form technology. As if it
That's
was.
exactly it. It's physics, biology, chemistry, the natural sciences cohering with the social sciences is what E.O. Wilson defines as consilience, the unity of knowledge, and the information gap of how social sciences affect natural sciences is gene culture coevolution, how we act as eusocial creatures. Eusocial creatures are creatures that nest and that build societies like ants. He is an expert in ants and wasps and bees. They have queens and they have cultures of building together. We are one of very few, of all the creatures on Earth, there are very few eusocial creatures. It's really what you're saying is everything.
Right, but I love the context because from that perspective, technology is the cutting edge of evolution, and that we are,
Exactly. It's Metcalfe's law. Metcalfe's law is collaboration is the key to our evolution. We've managed to collaborate now at massive scale. Voice over IP, internet protocol enabled collaboration. The Gutenberg printing press was the last big evolutionary leap when you were able to turn from manuscript, which was written in monasteries. That's why religions had so much power, because they owned knowledge and information. You leap in 1442 with the Gutenberg printing press that enables the democratization of print, of information that can then be distributed via books. And then the next leap is the internet, but the internet gets corrupted by advertisers who trap humanity. And the big opportunity is to take free open source software, which is
First Amendment free speech and take that to evolve humanity and stop the hijacking, right? And so the information gap is what the next wave will bring. It will close that information gap. And the question is, who controls that information? Who knows? Who decides? And who decides? Because if you, which you can clearly see, that if culture and genes are working together and perceptions do control your behaviors, then misperceptions will create misbehaviors. And that's what we've got Mr. Putin doing.
What
So
about
And
Google
if you want
Reality?
to if you want to close the loop between physics to chemistry to biology to social, you don't have to look much further than quantum entanglement. And I strongly encourage you, if you haven't already, to watch the series Life After Death on Netflix. The quantum entanglement that completes that circle of life is real.
so you're gonna like this.
And that's because, sorry, just to finish that point then, and that's because the 20 watts of energy, because of the conservation of energy principle, which is physics, means that even when you die, that energy can, has to go somewhere, right? It goes into the non-bounded environment of the skin that you're in. That's the point. You're bounded by the skin, and you have input fields, your eyes and your ears and your mouth and your nose and your skin, right? Which is then being hashed by your consciousness, which is the 20 watts of power that keeps everything going. It's just magnificent.
You'll like the segue to this article from Evan that about the misinformation platforms and whatnot. A new bill in California aims to make the big tech firms liable for social media addiction in children. The new bill adds to a stack of proposed legislation drawn upon to curb social media's influence over children. So,
So we're still not leaving that up. We're still not blaming parents then? What is the fuck is wrong with us? Like, can we please just do some parenting? You know what? Never mind. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
Germany,
No such thing as personal responsibility.
Germany warns against Russian antivirus use. The country's cyber watchdog in Germany warns against using Kaspersky's antivirus products because the Russians might have backdoors in that. And Ukraine arrests a hacker that Ukraine says was routing calls for Russian troops because the Ukrainians had shut down all phone calls between Russians, and somehow they were able to communicate, and now they have found the hacker who was enabling that, and now that person's been arrested, and that could give a nice advantage to the Ukrainians. It's not so easy to coordinate without devices. So the Ukraine, and by the way, the next headline says kind of exactly that from the Wall Street Journal. Ukraine mounts counteroffensive to drive Russians back from Kiev and other key cities. Okay, and the next is from Poppy that the U.S. Senate unanimously, which I'm trying to remember the last time the U.S. Senate did anything unanimously, but they unanimously condemned Putin as a war criminal. The U.S. Senate on Tuesday unanimously passed a resolution condemning Vladimir Putin as a war criminal, showing a rare sign of unity. Yeah, exactly right. And that's going to be a problem come the next election for one Mr. Donald J. Trump. So the next is, yes?
Tyler, did you see that the International Court of Justice also started? I sent this to both to you in the Twitter back channel. The International Court of Justice just ordered Russia to halt all aggression in Ukraine, if I can read this conviction or their pre-conviction in a good manner. So if you please could paste that so everybody else can see it. But they have actually, first of all, they did throw out Russia from the European Union's court system. That was done this morning. And now Hague is moving forward with condemning and they call it genocide. So, suck that one. Sorry.
Well, it's very interesting that the U.S. is. I thought the U.S. wasn't. I mean, I get what they're doing, but I thought we didn't support the ICC, the International Criminal Court. So we just need to work on being consistent on what we believe or don't believe, because if you're doing this, he would have to be tried someplace, and the place that they typically would do it is a place that we don't support. We got to work on our story as a country.
Okay, next is 90% of Ukrainian population could face poverty in protracted war. 9 out of 10 Ukrainians could face poverty and extreme economic vulnerability if the war drags on over the next year, wiping out 2 decades of economic growth. And last but not least, kind of the flip side of that last article is this one from the New York Times, found by our friend Poppy, which says the Ukrainian city of Mykolaiv is being shelled every day. Bodies are piled up at the morgue, but residents refuse to succumb to the Russian aggression. A businessman from Mykolaiv, Ukraine, is named Roman Nikora, is quoted as saying in this article that we will rebuild, I still have hands. So
apparently, Joe Biden is right now approaching, holding a speech regarding the war in Ukraine right now.
yeah, I just love the sober reminder of the incredible fortitude of the Ukrainians. Anyway, let's pause there, and we'll do it again tomorrow for a Thursday edition. And thank you to everybody.
Thank you. Messi, do you want to start your tech news around Africa?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah,
I
will
pin it on
start it.
top. Yeah, you can start the room so that we
There
can
you go.
jump over.
All right, thank
Thank you,
you.
everybody.
Thank you. Cheryl,
Adios.
stay safe.
Take care,
Yeah,
everybody.
Cheryl, stay
Stay
safe.
safe, Cheryl.
Buy
Yes.
Love
buy
you
Bye,
buy
guys.
guys.
portable
See you
buy
later.
portable batteries.
Yes. My
Yeah, buy
electricity is
UPS.
back.
Yeah,
Store
I,
but
I,
water.
I
it's
have a.
possible
Keep your
to
bum
Go,
warm.
earthquakes
But
in the late
seriously,
November.
I recommend the solar power bank.
go heat up
No
your
worries.
toilet, Cheryl. Go get.
No,
Yeah.
no problem.
May
Done.
everyone have a
Benjamin,
warm
Warm.
seat.
Yeah.
Yes.